Hey, hey, hey. What's up, guys? Note Investor here. What is going on with these alts? Bitcoin is finally joining the party here. It's been a I wouldn't say very strong. There's been a handful of very strong names in the altcoin space, but all around the board, alts have done well here lately. And Bitcoin finally showing a little bit of life after being pretty much sideways and boring here. Welcome everybody. We're going to do a live stream today. Take a look at some of these charts. As always, I will wait for a little bit here and we'll get going in about 1 or 2 minutes. We got viewers coming in. Yes, this is live. Let's look at some of these other names. So I got a handful of names I'm going to look at, but feel free to throw some names out on the chat if you want to see here. S13, ETH. Yes, ETH is finally moving. It's been a pretty interesting morning here just with some of the recent action, but we'll certainly take a look at a lot of these names here. Let me drop that link for you guys on the Slack channel and on Twitter. Right. All right, cool. So how is it going, everyone? What'd you say about Link? Yeah, Link. Well, we'll look at the USD pairs and the BTC pairs because, so my strategy over the last couple of days has basically been staying fully in terms of crypto exposure in the trading accounts and essentially trading alts versus BTC. And then when I book the gains, I've been going into Bitcoin. And to be honest with you, I was getting a little nervous yesterday because I saw the rally and I thought, okay, this is a normal pause, pullback. Any profits I'm going to bank into Bitcoin just so I can hold Bitcoin. It looked like it wanted to start moving higher. Over the weekend we were watching this downtrend line here, finally popped it. Nice pullback right to these moving averages. And then yesterday I just kind of kept drifting lower and I was thinking, is that it? Is this thing going to just form a little descending triangle and crack and make another drop lower? Nice to finally see that it didn't, finally showing some follow through. So that worked out nicely. I'm glad I stayed in the BTC and not moved back into cash. So yeah, BAT's been running nicely for a little while. Tron has been moving, so there's been a lot. But with this latest rally, and this is what I was waiting on, either Bitcoin to drop and hit the lows again, what would that do to the alts, and Bitcoin to pop. Generally, you see a little bit of retreat on the alt BTC pairs. For example, Cardano. I've been holding Cardano here for a few days. It was looking nice this morning. Maybe should have banked some of that, but I'm waiting for this guy to kind of break out on this broader time frame here. So still holding some there. It's not horrible yet. Still holding above the 10 EMA on the 4-hour, but if it starts to lose that, I'll just move the rest back into Bitcoin there. So we'll see what happens here. But for now, Bitcoin's looking strong, finally showing some life. It's been a relatively sideways, quiet kind of day or a couple of weeks here. Ever since the big drop that we saw a couple weeks back, the 20% drop, then it's pretty much just gone flat, sideways, really struggled until today to get above even the 10 EMA, which is this blue line here. It had a few attempts over, but had not been able to close above that level on a daily basis. Finally breaking through today. Looks like it'll close above that here today. Next level up is the 22 EMA, basically 86, maybe 8,700 on the upside. That'll line up with some little bit of resistance back here. And then after that, it's a little bit of a vacuum. There's not much resistance until you get back into this level. And then of course the level that it broke down from. Meanwhile, many of the alts have already fully recovered from that initial break lower and even gone higher. So it's been interesting to see those alts rally while Bitcoin has just sat sideways and sat tight. And it could just have easily gone lower after sitting sideways and broken low, broken down again and kind of squashed that alt party. So could have gone either way, absolutely, but it's working out so far. All right, so those are the levels to watch on Bitcoin. Let's zoom out here a little bit, just kind of big picture. Got to keep this in mind. Obviously, we had the big break from this descending triangle that we saw forming here for many months, and until that's resolved, that's really going to be, the big picture is still leaning downward on the broader scheme of things. Yes, it found some support, and that support lines up very well with this support that I was pointing out back here. Didn't quite get there, but it's pretty close in terms of max support, right? We had a couple levels on the way down, but the most I wanted to see this thing drop was about the mid 7Ks. If you recall that live stream, we were looking at that when it was breaking down. So far, it's held above that. A little bit of a triple bottom. I'm not a big fan of the triple bottoms. Generally they don't hold up. You had a double bottom here, almost to the exact dollar rallying, but just the overall trend was still basically digesting that move lower and finally breaking higher today. You can see the RSI was coming off these oversold levels on the daily. Long time it had been before we seen RSI down at these levels, right? It's been, what, a year maybe? Yeah, I mean, last time we were looking at RSI at those levels was December of last year. And so it's been a nice move, a big reset on this move, dropped lower. So now I'm watching this on the way up. So on the way up, when you're looking at the RSI, there's a couple of strategies to pay attention to. The first one is this 60 RSI level. If it continues to just live below that, generally speaking, it remains in a bearish mode, relatively weak. And right now it's just kind of resetting. On the way up, 22 EMA, and then this declining 50 EMA, which also would run into this resistance. So if we continue to see some bounce action, that's going to be a major resistance level to be paying attention to. You could get a pullback and then a breakthrough, but I'm not so sure it bounces that high. Looking at some fib retracement levels on the bounce that we saw, or on the move lower from the breakdown points. Let's pull those off. And if we look at just the impulse leg, I'll do this two ways. If we look at the impulse move down that kicked off that selling, then you can see that we're right at the 382, but we've already hit 382 and then pulled back. And so generally what happens is if it continues higher, it's going to move right past that 382 to the next level. 50% is right at 8,700, which lines up almost perfectly with that 22 EMA. And then the 618, which is right around 8,900, lines up with that psychological 9K level. And so bounces will continue into probably the 50%, maybe 618. After that, I think the bounce starts to get a little bit exhausted, and we'll see where it goes from there. I mean, unless some massive buying comes in, I would look for a retest, a higher low on the daily chart from that point on. But that'd be a pretty decent percentage move, even from here, right? You're looking at, to the 618, another 6% move from the not all-time low, but from the relative low here, about 15% up. So it'd be a nice little bit of a retracement. Now, if you did it from this most recent peak here, the 618 gets closer to that breakdown point, and so it just depends on how you're looking at that fib levels. I like to start from the impulse moves, right? What was the kind of the catalyst move, the big rollover, and so that's how I'm doing it. But at the end of the day, price action, volume, that's really what drives all of this. Keep that in mind. Indicators are nice, they're handy, but all they do is indicate, they don't dictate. There's indicators are more for confirmation. They're not generally used to make every single one of your buying and selling decisions. The most important indicator is horizontal support and resistance levels. Generally, those hold up very well. So that's what I'd be watching here. In the near term, you're seeing Bitcoin try to take out this most recent resistance here, and then back here you got a little bit, and then after that it's just going to be more retracement levels. So that's it for the BTC chart. Big picture on the weekly chart, not a lot has changed. It did hold that support level, almost didn't quite reach it, bouncing into the moving averages. The 10 EMA on the weekly is still up here at over 9,000, so we could have a pretty decent bounce here if it continues. But then after that, that's the big question, right? Is that the end of the bounce? Was it just a bounce? Is this trend line resistance going to continue to hold? And so you'll have a little bit of an confluence of support and resistance right into that zone. If it continues past that, very positive, but that'd be the first level to be watching on the way up here. All right, let's look at some of these alts here, because some of these alts have been on quite the move here over the last several days here. I'm going to go through a list that I've got quickly, and then I will take some requests from you guys, and we'll go from there. All right, so looking, oh, before I do that, sorry, let's go to the, I did want to see the, what do you call it? The coin market cap here, right? We've come off of the most recent highs. We were approaching, 71% or something here recently. And you can see it's kind of rolled over a little bit here. Let's go to the most recent year. Pulling back a little bit, not a massive drop, right? It's not a all across the board altcoin rally, but you are seeing some positive momentum in the alts versus Bitcoin here, especially in some of the more recent, mid-cap names here. But you're seeing some pretty good action here. ETH gaining a little bit of traction, Tron, some of the other names. A lot of smaller cap names have been moving lately, and so maybe we've seen a near-term peak in the BTC dominance for now. That would be good for the alt traders. All right, so let's see what else we got here. I wanted to show you guys ETH. So ETH BTC is one I've been in here for a couple of days. Testing my patience here, but still holding up relatively well. I'm just watching this trend line, and let me clear this line off real quick. I mean, it's just marching steadily. You can see the 10 EMA just continues to rise higher, finally clearing a little resistance, edging out above resistance, outperforming Bitcoin as Bitcoin moves higher, and this resistance back here from late July is finally being taken out. You can see that this was resistance, and we had a strong move up here in mid-September. That's exactly where it paused, pulled right back to that 22 EMA on the daily, back up, pulling back, and then finally edging higher. So very nice to see that. Not quite the explosive breakout that I was hoping for, but nonetheless still looking positive. 4-hour RSIs starting to get up there, but it has room to run if it wants to continue higher, especially on the daily chart. Let's go back to the daily. RSI has plenty of room to run from that perspective. It continues higher, then what I'm going to be looking for here on the way up, next level, about that 0.024, and then after that 0.025, right? So versus Bitcoin, it's got, maybe 7 to 10% as far as next target on the way up, and then that lines up pretty well with this. So that's really the first big target I'd be looking for. That 0.025 is the first level. Looking at it from the dollar pair, ETH USD moving higher with Bitcoin, but also outperforming as we just saw. Finally taken out this resistance around 183, quickly moving to that 190 level. If we zoom back here a little bit, it's got room to run before it hits a major wall. I mean, it's pretty much right at the breakdown level here, but the level I'd be watching is basically that $200 mark, that round number there. This line is right at 202, but that lines up with some resistance here, so potentially a retracement up to that. If it continues higher, then awesome, but that's what I'm watching here. That could line up well with some of those BTC targets, but good little breakout. And it's kind of, it went flat. You can see almost like a little bit of a handle forming here, finally edging out of that handle yesterday. That was a little handle there as it cleared some resistance there. So nice move. The volume signatures are very positive there. Buying volume on the way up, lighter volume on the way down, a little bit of a pause, finally breaking out here. So ETH is looking good. It's got some catalysts going for it right now. There's some news and some attention around this one, so that helps. But it's a nice little setup there on the BTC pair here. Some of the bigger movies here today. Link, and that's been a big mover for some time here anyway, but it's just been steadily marching since making that low here in mid-September. Yes, I know there's some attention on this one and some potential promotions and all that good stuff, but Link has been a good one here. A little bit of a breakout here. This was where I initially added to my first Link position. That was on the BTC pair. Then it rallied, and I liked the setup here, but I came in from the USD side, had some cash on the sidelines, added there, and then I started to scale out here recently. I'm no longer in the position, but finally was scaling out once it broke this resistance level. That was my target on the way up here. But very extended near term. If you look at the RSI on the daily, it was approaching 90. Big reversal candle forming right now. Even a pullback to the 10 EMA on the daily chart is a pretty big percentage move lower even from now, right? That's another 14% from the high of today. That'd be a pullback of 25%. So that's always the challenge, right? Is do you sell on the way up, or do you wait for a technical level to be broken. And a lot of it just depends on how much you have left of your position when you're trading, where you got in, all that fun stuff. But I'm certainly out of it now. I booked it. And again, those gains were just basically booked into Bitcoin at that point. So not going to complain. Good little trade there. Bat's been moving and pulling back here. Bad BTC, along with many of the other alts, are pulling back right now as Bitcoin in the last couple of hours has had a nice pop above some near-term resistance here. So you're seeing BAT finally pulling back here. It has been showing some divergences, though. If you look at the RSI, this has been declining. The peaks have been declining, even as the price continues to make new relative highs on that 4-hour chart. And so that's just a telltale sign generally when you start to see that and you see this RSI just struggling to make new highs. You can see that with the MACD histograms as well. Either tighten up the stops is generally what I'll do, or I'll just get out of the way and book some gains. Never will, rarely will you ever get out at the exact top, but it's always nice to kind of sell into the momentum on the way up and then just leave some to ride. And generally what I'll do is I'll keep either a moving average or a horizontal price level as kind of my trailing stop on the way up. So if it pulls back to moving average but holds, I'll stay with it. Just simple trend following strategies. Nothing fancy or complicated there. And here, this would basically be taking me out right now if I was still in it. I'd be booking some gains on that. The daily 10 EMA, however, is still down here. And so if you're trading more of a swing trade strategy or you're looking at daily time frames, then you probably might still stay with this because all things considered, it's still trending higher, it's still above the daily 10 EMA. This is a normal pullback. On the lower time frames, though, it is showing some signs of slowing down here. But this was a nice breakout over that 2,900 level on the BTC pair. So looking at that one there, still looking pretty good. Big picture, but near term, a little bit exhausted, probably pulling back here a little bit. What do I think about Cardano here? We just covered that one. Long story short, I've been holding some Cardano here for a few days. I'm still liking it. Let's look at Cardano. Did I just cover it? Maybe I didn't. ETH, Cardano. So the long story short is I jumped into the Cardano side here because of the USD chart. I was really liking this setup. Finally, this, along with many of the other big caps, were doing this after the breakdown, right? They went flat for, about a week. And I was just watching them because they were really starting to coil up. And it was just a matter of, are they going to finally roll over? Is this a bear flag? Or are they going to pop and see a little bit of covering? And that's what they did. And the volume on that breakout was very bullish. Look at that volume as this one broke out. And so that's what got me into the trade and just kind of have been riding this. Now I've got this highlighted here on the USD side. That was my first target on the dollar pair. Didn't quite make it there. And I was basically looking back at this as well as some fib retracement levels from the top here, and so that's how I set my first target there. Still holding up above that daily or that 4-hour 10 EMA. So on the shorter time frames, right, it's not bad. It's still holding up. RSI is not crazy overbought or anything. Daily has plenty of room to run if it wants to. So I'm going to give it some wiggle room. It is breaking out because of the Bitcoin move here, but versus BTC, certainly retreating here a little bit right into that resistance. So one I'll be watching here today. There's the pullback here on higher volume, along with a lot of these names right now because of the relatively strong move in Bitcoin. Let's go back to Bitcoin for those of you that are just joining us here. Looking at that 4-hour chart, it did have a strong move off of that low, almost a triple bottom test here of that 7,700 level. Nice strong rally, pulling right back, bull flag into that 1022 EMA pair, and then breaking out here. And so what else are we looking at here? Link, 0x. 0x has been a nice move and had a breakout of this little cup and handle pattern here. So looking at that, let's zoom in here. Again, this was another one that was getting some promotion and all that fun stuff. Doing good, but had a pullback. Nice little handle on very quiet volume, and then yesterday just blasted out of that box here. Nice little move. Now I preempted this one. I got in pre-breakout just because I was liking the setup. It was a relatively low risk entry for me. Essentially was, if you wanted to wait for a breakout, the handle breakout would have been your early entry point. If you got in before the breakout, then essentially that 2500 level, or excuse me, 2600 level, breaking below that would have invalidated that pattern. So it offered a relatively tight stop, and then of course broke out. And the first target was a measured move target here around that 3200 level. Reached that. The next major target was around 3500 level. Couldn't quite see that happen. And then today, finally rolling over here a little bit, pulling back. But what a nice move that was yesterday. All right, here. What were some of the other ones? We looked at ETH. We looked at Link, 0x, Tron. We looked at BAT, Tron BTC here. It's been just steadily climbing. Here's the 4-hour view since the September 24th low, and just a steady climb. You can see the moving average pairs moving higher, fanning out here, finally rolling over today. And again, the volume on some of this pullback certainly is significant in terms of some of the relative averages. Certainly signs of distribution, profit taking going on here after a very nice run. I mean, if you look at the recent move here, just on this guy, for example, over the last, 3 weeks or whatever, up 46% versus Bitcoin. So yeah, it's due for some profit taking. I mean, if you get a move like that, at least raise the stops or do something like that, right? So certainly pulling back here versus BTC. If we look at the dollar pair on this guy, again, still just steadily climbing higher, but there are some divergences starting to show up here. If we go to the 1-hour chart, you can see that pretty clearly. RSI just drifting lower, making lower highs, even as price continues to make higher highs. And so we're starting to see that signature on a lot of these alts. 4-hour, not quite as pronounced. I mean, still just trending higher, but there's certainly some signs at the lower time frames that some of these are losing a little bit of steam here on the way up. All right, let's see what else here. I've got a couple of more, and then we'll get to some of your guys' charts, and we'll go from there here. Tron, what else did I cover? What were some of the other names I was going to look at? So we looked at Link. ICX broke out yesterday, and look at that. Bam! Smack down. Head fake. Fake out, breakouts. Ugly break of resistance, and then just drop in support. Had this nice little rising trend line, losing that on well above average volume. Still an hour left on that 4-hour candle, so this volume is going to certainly be higher than that prior spike up. So not looking pretty there. A little bit of a fake out here. Daily chart is forming a big bearish engulfing candle after rising. If it loses this trend line, that's going to look like a big bear break. IOTA, another one that's just steadily been climbing, but finally starting to pause and roll over here. But this has had a nice move here too. So over the last month, if you look at this relative low here to the peak, about 56% versus Bitcoin here. And here in the last several days, just finally giving it up, rolling over. This looked like it was probably the climactic bind, big bar with high volume followed by a quick reversal, just not been able to recover and starting to roll over here. The 10 EMA on the 22 EMA is finally breaking lower here, so maybe it's done for now. It's right at the 10 EMA on the daily. Even a pullback to that 22 EMA would line up with some of this prior breakout point. So big picture, it could just be a normal pause. It just really depends on your time frame and what you're looking at as far as trading strategies and all that. There's a million ways to do this here, but generally speaking, I'll look at the 4-hour charts and the daily charts. If I'm doing quicker trades, or if it's a smaller cap name that just has much higher volatility, then I'll go a lower time frame, the 1-hour chart. But let's see here. Yeah, we'll definitely look at one more look at BTC here before we get over this stream here. Just a nice little move here in the last hour or so. We'll see if it can hold up though, right? Bitcoin, when it gets volatile, it gets volatile. What were some of the other ones here? Raven was moving nice. We looked at Tron. We looked at 0x. Oh, Ripple. Looking at that XRP, similar to Tron. Nice little steady climb here over the last several weeks. Finally pausing here. A big divergence on that RSI, the 4-hour view. A lot of distribution going on here. If you look at this resistance level, let me get my marker here. If you look at that resistance level, big volume here on the red side. And then today here, another big volume bar on that red side as it starts to break lower. If it closes below that on that 4-hour chart, that's going to be confirmation. That's probably a good near-term top, and it'll likely show some further pullback. First level to be watching on the pullbacks would be this prior resistance back here. That lines up pretty well with that 50 EMA on that 4-hour chart. That's also the 10 EMA on the daily. So I would expect some more downside testing on this guy here. But, you know, it's had a nice steady move here as well, much like some of these others. If you look at the move over the last couple of weeks, what's that, 42% versus Bitcoin after a long downtrend lower. I mean, what is that, a year almost of just steadily losing ground versus Bitcoin? So it was certainly due. We'll see if this is finally turning the corner longer term. It's yet to be seen, but for now, I mean, this has been a nice little rally off the lows starting in September. Normal pullback would be, again, right back to these levels. Would not be unusual, especially on the daily time frame. So if you're looking more from a longer term perspective and you're looking for an opportunity, I'd be looking at, you know, that 3,100 to 3,200 level on that BTC pair is kind of your first support zone on the XRP, if that's your cup of tea. Matic. Let's go look at Matic because it had a big move here earlier today. Finally breaking out of this range I've been watching for, seems like forever, but, you know, it's pretty much all of September. Most of October has been forming this little range here. And yesterday finally started signaling that it was ready to go. A lot of volume started coming in, edged out. It just continued to march higher here today. Pretty good reversal here on this BTC move, but made for a nice, 20+% move here just in the last several candles. On that daily chart, again, got pretty excited relatively quickly, up 35% here in a couple of days. 10 EMA is still way down here at the breakout point, so could just be a little bit of a pause. We'll see if it continues higher. There is certainly some rumors and some of that stuff driving this one, but that's a good technical breakout after a very long, tight consolidation here, finally moving higher on well above average volume. So Matic, one that's been on the radar here recently. One big reversal there. Let's look at some of these other names here real quick. RCN, been watching this setup here, don't have a position. Again, keep in mind this already had a very strong move up about 250+%, but it is forming a very bullish ascending triangle pattern. Doesn't mean that they break out every time, but it's a high probability consolidation / continuation pattern, and so definitely one to watch. Probably nothing for me to do considering how strong of a move it already had until it can finally start showing like it's ready to get going again. But this one has been coiling up here. Big volume on this way down here today, so just keep that in mind here. If it continues to hold the line, looks good, but I'd like to see it close above that 550 level on the way up here. That's RCN. Couple more and then I'll hand it over. TNT continues to march higher on the lower time frames. However, again, like some of these others, showing some signs of pausing, slowing down here. Doesn't mean they just, completely retrace that entire move, but the momentum is slowing down for sure. So at best, it's due for a pause, a breather, let things cool off a little bit before it wants to continue higher. CRPT, again, Cryptorium. It's always a hard one to say. Just still moving along just nicely. What else? Aeon. Okay, we're good. All right. I think that was it on my list. Let's go look at Bitcoin, and then I'll take a look at a handful of names that you guys want to look at, and we'll call it a stream after that here. So looking at Bitcoin, 8,500. Continuing to move nicely here off of this break, this pullback, had initials pop off the lows, a little bit of a bull flag. And so as I mentioned at the start of the stream, my strategy here over the last couple of days, week or so, has just basically been to stay in Bitcoin, looking at these alts as they've been rallying, and then booking the gains back into Bitcoin when I'm moving out of the alts. So, and full disclosure, yesterday I was looking at this going, it's not looking too good. I was hoping Bitcoin would have rallied by now, and I, could have just as easily turned into this is a lower high and the start of a big descending triangle that was going to give us a bear break. Luckily, it's moving higher, but again, in the big picture, you got to keep in mind the bigger picture is still relatively bearish, right? Technically speaking. So what I mean by that is, we had this big bear break from this pattern. The good news is on the break, it held above this key support level I was watching around the 7,500 level. The moving averages are still trending lower. Yes, the 10 EMA is finally trying to curl higher after going flat for about a week and a half. But price today is the first day that it's back above that daily 10 EMA since since way back here. I mean, this is first day since this break over here. So, big picture, the sellers have the broader momentum here. Near term, yep, there's some buying pressure coming in. You could see some short covering here. There'll be some targets on the way up to consider. And so the first target on the way up is around that $8,600 to $8,700 level. That's the next target I'm looking at on the way up. And then 9K is kind of a good psychological round number. At that point, you could see that 50 daily EMA continue to drop and make, kind of meet that point. And then if it really goes, this is going to be a huge resistance level to be watching, right? This confluence of support and resistance that gave way here. So the blue line is that breakdown point that finally broke down from that descending triangle. And of course, the upper line is that descending trend line that acted as a pretty solid level of resistance for the last couple of months. So it'll be interesting to watch if price continues higher, what happens when we get there. At best, I would think we would get a little bit of a breather, pause, and then maybe it breaks through. But that's what I'm going to be watching. And then these levels, they line up relatively well with the Fibonacci retracement levels from this bounce from the lows here. Right now, the 382 was that first pause level, pulled back. 50% takes you right around here, 8,700 or so, and then the 618 gets you closer to that 9K level. So those are my near-term targets on the BTC side. And of course, support now is going to be this higher low that's been formed. And so on the way down, 8,100 ideally is what you want to see price hold. Otherwise, I don't see that 7,700 holding if it continues lower. It'll probably undercut that. All right. What else? Litecoin. All right, let's go look at Litecoin. Litecoin. This is a Litecoin dollar pair on the Coinbase, bouncing right into that 22 EMA here. Next target up is going to be around $63 or $62. We'll see how that lines up on the fib levels. So if you look at the start of the move down to the low, you're right at the 382 level right now. So this would be an interesting place to see a pullback. If it continues higher, $62 and then 65. Give or take a few pennies. How's it looking from the BTC side? Litecoin. Honestly, that looks like a little bear flag to me on that BTC pair. Right into that 50 EMA on the daily, or that's a 50 SMA, but I don't know. We'll see. It's gotta take out this big ugly reversal candle to start really turning the corner on that daily chart. Not looking too pretty. 4-hour view, as long as it holds that lower trend line, I'd be watching that, but there's some divergences starting to show up here, so probably wouldn't be my first choice. There's other more attractive looking charts right now. Let's see here. VeChain. Oh, that's right. Oh, this got blown out. I was hoping to pull up the alerts here. Let me see here. Let me pull it up on my other screen. Let's go to VeChain for now. VeChain. Let's go to VeChain dollar here real quick. VeChain, oh my goodness. There was a handful of names from yesteryear showing up on the alerts list yesterday. Let's see what the watch list shows. So on the watch list right now, obviously a bunch of names that are not surprising. Ethereum, Bitcoin, Tron. Let's see here. Binance. Litecoin's on there. Zencash. Einsteinium. Icon had a big reversal. Quantum and Neo. Let's go look at a handful of those names. I generally stay away from like the really low volume names, the low small cap, aka crap coins. You know, there's some good trades sometimes, but a lot, generally speaking, they're just flash in the pan moves. Neo was looking pretty good here. Again, a lot of these became short term, a little bit extended here on that 1 hour, 4 hour chart, but they're pausing right now with this move in Bitcoin. All around though, I mean, it's, you know, you got to keep the daily chart in mind, right? This was a big break, pause. Several days has been pretty good, some way more than others. This one's still well below that breakout point or the breakdown point. You know, you compare that to something like, you know, like BAT, for example. You know, the breakdown point was, where was it? It was back here, it just fully recovered. Something like a Tron, right? There certainly has been names that are showing much more relative strength, right? Just they had that breakdown and then just popped. So not everything, of course, has been that strong. We'll go look at Binance Coin here in a second. Quantum looks like it's hit the move. That's probably it for now on Quantum. Right at resistance there, pulling back. A little bit of a reversal bar forming on that daily chart. BNB. Any guys on Binance US, by the way? I am not. Ooh, Binance Coin. Fake out, breakout, shake out. What else we got? Tron Ontology. A lot of reversals happening. We looked at 0x. We looked at IOTA. We looked at Stellar. Is Stellar finally done? Stellar is finally done. It's a ugly little double top forming there. Big bearish engulfing candle on that current 4 hour bar. Not looking too pretty there. EOS, you know, a lot of these alts are, they're showing signs of distribution. It's going to be interesting to see if they recover. There's only 37 minutes left on this current candle, so most of them will probably end looking negative. If they can close above some of this resistance, that'll negate it. The positive is they're still above these trending moving averages, but in the short term, they look like they're breaking down, or they're rolling over or whatever, right? Recovering a little bit. So just something to watch there here. Let's see here. Sorry, I got distracted there while I was talking. My phone was ringing. Litecoin. All right, I think we looked at some of those here. ETH BTC. So short time frame, I'm going to go to the 1 hour, and I'll even do 30 minutes here. So on the 1 hour, a little bit of a reversal forming after breaking out. But for me, you know, I jumped in this one a little bit early. I was pre-breakout on this guy, so I'm going to let it ride for now on the 1 hour, as long as it holds up above, you know, 0.22 or something on that chart. On the 4 hour view, you know, there's a big reversal volume there, a lot of selling into that breakout. We'll see if that can recover or if that's the end of the move. Again, it's had a very nice move versus Bitcoin for, you know, being such a larger cap name, up about 20% since that low. But again, this was a nice breakout setup. I'm going to give it some wiggle room. Again, this is a green trade just because I've been in it for a little bit now, so have room to run. It's not been a monster trade, but at least it's held up versus Bitcoin. So I'm going to give it some wiggle room. So what I'm watching here, the daily 10 EMA is kind of that line of last defense after a steady climb. So if it can continue to hold up above that, positive. If you're looking at a shorter time frame, even the 10 EMA on the 4 hour, which is basically this breakout point, was what I'd be watching here. Let's go to that 30-minute view. 30-minute view, RSI is already kind of cooling off. Yeah, I mean, on the shorter time frame, if you're trading it short term, right, that looks like a failed breakout attempt, a little bit of a pullback, but 0.22 is really kind of that level for me, big picture speaking. If it closes below that, starts to lose that level, that will look like a failed breakout attempt. At that point, you can see the selling pressure pick up. Litecoin, BTC, man, Bitcoin just crashing the party. There's Stellar Lumens. There's the Zill's lower volume name. Let's go there. Let's go back to the BTC here. Still going. Nice. Nice move, Bitcoin. I hope you weren't short. Yeah, everything looks bad against Bitcoin right now. And that's typical, right? So if you've been in this space for a while, that's just typical. Bitcoin has these strong moves out of nowhere, and you get the pullback in the alts. But it's been a good several days for the alts, so hopefully you guys got to participate in some of that. But you also gotta remember to book some gains along the way. Don't give it all back. All right. Well, that's looking like it for now, my friends. KMD. I'll do a couple more here real quick and we'll wrap it up. KMD. Big reversal there. But the big question is, right, is this like a bottom? Is this a long-term low for some of these alts? And it certainly could be. They're finally starting to turn the corner after going flat for a little while. But, there's two scenarios to consider, right? Is this going to be a long-term low that results in, a turning of the corner and then, a changing of the trend where you start seeing higher highs and higher lows, and at that point now you're looking at testing some key resistance levels on the way up? Or is this going to be one of those, yeah, they hit a low, the selling pressure is probably done, but there's no new money coming into the name, and now it's just going to kind of go flat and be like a long-term new price range, right? And we've seen that in a lot of these older names, like I'm going to pull up some names from yesteryear, but look at names like Golem, right? They go flat, then they hit a low, and they rally a little bit, then they drop, make a new low, and while something may hit a low, that doesn't always mean that it's going to translate into a new, bull market for that coin necessarily. It could hit a low and then just kind of go range bound and, be dead money, if you will, for a long time, right? Doesn't mean everything that's finally bottomed is going to suddenly rally. Of course, with the crypto space being so highly correlated, if we do see another, really strong, and I mean really strong, across the board altcoin market, yeah, even some of those names that are just flat and dead eventually will start to get some, money coming into their space because of that. But, all things being equal, is that the place to be, or would you rather be in the names that are strong, right? And I generally will bet on strength versus, trying to bottom pick and say, oh, this is the low for the coin. For me, I'd rather pick something that has volume coming in. It's got some momentum going for it. It's just a higher probability from that perspective. But, if you're looking at it from a project perspective, if you like the fundamentals of the project and you really believe in the project long term, right, then that's a different story. Then you're looking at, okay, this might be a good value here, and I'm willing to wait it out for whatever long it takes, right, a year or 2 or 3. That's another story. But I'm thinking more from a trading perspective. Even a swing trading perspective, just because something hits a low doesn't necessarily mean that's it. It's going to keep, it's going to start going up from here. All right. So good move, Bitcoin. Nice to see finally joining the party here. We'll see how long it lasts. It's already hit basically that first target I was looking at, 8,600 when we started to stream. And so next target on the way up is around 8,800, 8,900. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Appreciate you being here as always. Until next time.